Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone to Gita Diploma course. So happy to be with all of you once again. This is Madhusudan Vishnu. We have been doing this journey of studying Bhagavad Gita together, and I congratulate you for coming so far. Now we just have few more sessions to go, and your course of study of Bhagavad Gita will be complete. So let's start without any delay by chanting the prayers. Om Ajnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we're going to start a new chapter today, chapter 15. But before we do that, let's quickly revise what we discussed in chapter 14. So in that, Lord Krishna first of all explained about the association of soul, which is spiritual in nature, with nature, which is material in nature. And then in the next few verses, he talks about how the three modes which make up the nature, they bind the soul into this material world. Then he spoke about the modes in detail, the working of the modes, the effect of the modes, the result of the modes. And further, when Arjuna asked three questions to Lord Krishna, he answered how a person can rise above the modes, can go beyond the modes. Mam chayobhya bicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityetan Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. 14.26 gives that answer. We discussed about the modes. We discussed about the prison house. Naturally, if you're talking about prison house, you would also talk about how to come out of that prison house. How can someone be released from the prison house? What does that person have to do? So this chapter talks about that. Therefore, we name this chapter as the rescue plan. In the previous chapter, basically 4 questions were answered by Lord Krishna. What are the 3 modes of nature? How do they work? How do they bind up the jivas? And how to get free? So Arjuna came to know about all this. And now, in response to that knowledge, Arjuna has few more questions which Lord Krishna will take care of in this chapter. And those questions are all the souls that exist in the prison house? Is Krishna also in captivity? Is Krishna also like one of the prisoners? What about those who are in the prison house, but they are so enamored by the prison house that they don't want to get out of it? And finally, 4th question, where to find the way to freedom? Basically, he wants to know what is the role of the Vedas in someone's life. Krishna is giving the knowledge of Gita to Arjuna. But where is the Vedic knowledge? What is the relationship of the knowledge given in the Vedas to the knowledge given in Bhagavad Gita? Which is superior? Are they interrelated or not? Can Vedas help us become free from bondage, from the prison house? So these are the questions that Arjuna is having in his mind. And Lord Krishna is going to answer them in this chapter. This chapter is again a very short chapter, or I would say the shortest chapter. If you remember, there are 2 chapters in Bhagavad Gita which are the shortest ones. Anyone remembers that? Okay, let us quickly check with you. Which 2 chapters are the smallest ones in the Gita? Let's see if you remember from day 1. We had mentioned it in the day 1. Also, we mentioned in a session just few sessions before. Which 2 chapters are the smallest ones in the Bhagavad Gita? 12 and 15. Yes, thank you so much. That's the answer. 12 and 15. These are the smallest chapters. So 15 is now ready for us to learn. Before we begin with the first verse, I would like to clear up a concept which will be very helpful. So identify this structure, what you see, and Can this structure be used as a prison house? What is it called, this structure? And can it be used as a prison house? Please try to respond quickly. Fort. Yes, thank you. Fort. And can it be used as a prison house? Yes, yes, it can be used as a prison house. We have so many examples as such. Like this is a fort in Maharashtra, India, called Ahmednagar Fort. Earlier, it used to be the residential area of a king, but later on, during British Raj, the rule of the British Empire, it became a prison house used by them. There are many such examples, right? There are many, many such examples. So, this analogy will help us now understand better. Durga, prison house, is also known as Durg. Durg means a place which is difficult to enter into and difficult to exit from. That's called Durg, very difficult to go. So, this material world is compared to a Durg, a prison house. And who is the prisoner? Who is the prisoner? The living entity. What is the prison uniform? Let's ask all of you. What is the prison uniform? If the prisoner is the living entity and the material world is a prison, what is the prison uniform? Very slow. Okay, body. Yes. Thank you. Body is the prison uniform. What are the shackles, the chains and shackles? The chains and shackles are the three modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. And who is the jailer? The jailer is known as Durga. You know, from the word Durg has come the word Durga, one who protects the Durg, or one who supervises the Durg is called Durga or Durga Devi. So she is the jailer. She caretakes for this world, people living in this world, and she punishes them if required, or she guides them if required. She blesses them or rewards them also. Lesson: any place has a purpose attached to it, right or wrong. You go to a library, it has a purpose. A school, it has a purpose. An hospital has a purpose. A stadium has a purpose. A temple has a purpose. Any place that is created for a purpose. So similarly, in the lesson we learn, any place has a purpose attached to it for which that place is made. This world too, where we live, has a purpose. And after knowing that only, we will be able to do the work for which we have come here. So we have to know that we are not living in a world without any purpose, or a world full of accidents or chances. It's a world created for a purpose, and that purpose has to be understood. Why this world exists, why I exist in this world, and what do I have to do here? First verse of chapter 15. Urdhvamulamadaha shakham ashvatham prahur avyayam chandansi yasya parnani yastang veda savedavet. It is said that there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upward and its branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. So it is said what? There is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upward. Strange, right? How can a tree have its roots upward and its branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns? One who knows this knows the Vedas. This analogy of the Gita, in my understanding, is one of the most difficult to get. It's quite deep, complicated, informative, and instructive. However, to make it simpler for us to understand, we'll divide the analogy in sets of questions and answers and try to get the maximum out of it. Lord is trying to teach us many, many points through this one analogy. So, first of all, Lord Krishna compares the material world and material life to a banyan tree. It's a weird tree, as you heard it. It's upside down. Its roots are upward and branches are downward. Now, why upside down? What does the Lord want to say? He wants to say that there is a spiritual world, and that spiritual world is reality. And here we are in a material world, which is what? A reflection of that reality. Now, you see, a reflection is something in which you see the real image perverted manner, upside down, right? Like if you can see in the diagram here, there's a tree and there's a water surface below it. And when you look in the water, you see the reflection of the tree, which is upside down. So the material world or material life is a perverted reflection of spiritual world or actual reality. Therefore, the material life looks real, but it's not real. It has that illusion of reality. Second, what is the surface of reflection? Isn't it an intelligent question? If there is a tree, it needs a water surface to create a reflection. Similarly, if there is a spiritual world, what is that surface on which that spiritual world reflects upon to create this material world? That reflection is the living entity's independent desires, also known as material desires. The living entity wants to enjoy matter or materially. Therefore, the material life begins or material world begins to manifest for that living entity. Why has Lord Krishna used the example of a banyan tree only? Why not Ashoka tree, mango tree, lychee tree, banana tree? Why mango tree? Why, sorry, banyan tree? Because banyan tree, as you can see, is very complicated. So the lesson is the bondage of the material world and the three gunas is also very, very complicated. Like you can see in the diagram here, this image, you might be thinking so many trees, but it's not so many trees. It's just one tree with so many trunks. Imagine. And so many roots. And the roots which are inside the soil, we can't even see them. They are far spread, and this is just one tree. So that's how life is, very, very complicated mesh. Next question in the same analogy, what is the first root? When a tree begins to grow, it definitely has the first root. So what is the first root of this material life or material world? And that's Lord Brahma's planet, because Brahmaji is the first created material personality or being born directly from the Lord. Next, what are the branches of this tree? Different planets and living entities. What are the leaves of this tree? A specific section of the Vedas known as Karma Kanda. What are the fruits of this tree? Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. And next, how does this tree gets its nourishment? By the three modes of nature which are spread like juice throughout the tree. Now, we don't have time to, discuss these points in detail, but we touched upon them, give you some idea. Moving forward, Lord Krishna and Arjuna converses again on that topic. Arjuna says, too complicated and also very, very confusing. Krishna says, certainly it is. No one can understand where this tree begins and where it ends or where its foundation is. Arjuna, then how can one become free from this tree? Lord Krishna says, one must cut down this tree which is very strongly rooted. Must cut it down. Then only one can become free from this tree. How to cut it down? So Lord Krishna says you need to use the acts of detachment. Being detached. What is detachment? Is it Is it a taboo, a word that you should not speak about? No, detachment is something, a quality which every person should have if that person wants to live a peaceful life, a satisfied life. So, what is detachment? Not getting attached to what is not required in life or what you have to give up now, just getting detached or disconnected from it. Arjuna says, how to sharpen this axe? Because we get attached. We have a tendency to get attached. So how to keep that detachment always alive? And Lord Krishna mentions with knowledge and discrimination. Knowledge and discrimination sharpens the saw or the axe of detachment. And after you cut it down, what next? Hmm? Arjuna's question is very, very systematic. Uh, in this, in the step-by-step manner, he's asking next level questions for our benefit. So before we go to the answer, what Krishna will give, I have a question for you. Krishna said, "You sharpen the axe using knowledge and discrimination." How do you get knowledge and discrimination based on what you have studied in Bhagavad Gita so far? You know, um, how do you know? We have discussed this before. How do you develop knowledge and discrimination? From where does it come? Let's see if you still remember. This is long time back in the first section or the first unit of the Bhagavad Gita. How does one develop true knowledge? Tough question, right? Through parampara, jnana yoga, studying the scriptures by practice. No, 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 no. From Shastra. So, by consciousness, through the scriptures, by understanding Gita. We discussed this before. Knowledge is developed by Nishkama Karma, dutiful, detached work. That brings knowledge. That's what we studied in chapter 3 and specifically in chapter 5. So then Arjuna's question was, okay, we get detached from here, but then we go where? We get attached to what? So Krishna in response says, Tataha padam tat parimargitavyam. This is a very important concept. If I am getting detached from material life, I need to get attached to spiritual life. If I'm getting detached from material relationships, I need to get attached to spiritual relationships. If I'm getting detached from material happiness, I need to get attached to spiritual happiness. If I am getting detached from material environment, material ambitions, material desires, I do need to get attached to spiritual environment, spiritual desires, spiritual atmosphere, spiritual goals and aspirations. So then a person is safe. Otherwise, a person is then nowhere, neither here nor there. And a person feels kind of vacuum inside. So Arjuna is asking, okay, you get detached from this world, but then you get connected or attached to what? What next? And Lord says, seek that place. Arjuna, find out that place from which, having gone, one never returns, and there one surrenders to the original personality of Godhead. Arjuna asks, what is the process of surrender? Okay, I understand you are talking about going to the eternal place, and the process is surrender. So, what is that process of surrender? So Krishna in response says, first thing is you become free from delusion caused by false pride, nirmana. You don't think yourself as the lord of the material nature. And then comes a very beautiful verse talking about the process of transferring oneself to spiritual world or God's home. Nirmana moha jita sanga dosha adhyatma nitya vinivritta kamaha dvandver vimuktaha sukha dukkha sanger gacchantya padam avyayam tat. Many qualities are mentioned here. If a person develops those qualities, a person becomes qualified to enter into spiritual world. Those who are free from false prestige, first quality, illusion, and false association, who understand the eternal, who are done with material lust, who are freed from the dualities of happiness and distress, and who, unbewildered, know how to surrender unto the Supreme Person, attain to that eternal kingdom, the house or the home of God. So basically, Gita is teaching us that we have to migrate from material reality to spiritual reality, from material life to spiritual life, from material home to spiritual home. This world is the material world. And this world, like you can see here in the diagram, you'll see there's a hospital and there's a hotel. People visit both of these places just for a few days. No one goes to an hotel forever, and no one goes to a hospital also forever. They just go for a few days. In the hotel, people go for enjoyment. In the hospital, people go for recuperant, to recover from disease, from sickness. A hospital may also be very luxurious, just like a hotel. But the purpose of visiting a hospital is cure, recovery, treatment, becoming healthy again. And a hotel is a place where someone goes just to enjoy, spend one's hard earned money in paying the bills, and just enjoy or relax or chill out for a few days. Now, in your understanding, my dear viewers, if you have to compare this world, what will be the best comparison? Or how the world should be and how the people should live in this world? Is this world a hotel or is this world a hospital? We're talking about the material world. What is it created for? Purpose of its creation, the way it's designed. What is it for? It's a hospital. Yeah, it's made like an hospital. Yeah, the purpose is cure, treatment, reformation of whom? Of the living entities living in this world. That's how this world has been created. Problem begins when we misunderstand and we start thinking the world to be a hotel. That I've come here just to enjoy, just to be happy. How can one be happy if one is sick? So first we have to get healthy, then we can be happy. So then Arjuna says, what is the nature of that eternal kingdom which you are talking about? Krishna very simply explains, Na tadbhasyate suryo na shashanko na pavakaha yad gatva na nivartante tadhama paramam mama. That supreme abode of mind is not illumined by uh, sun or moon, nor by fire or electricity. That place is different from this place. Now, this place, the world where we live in, we are so much dependent on the sunlight, the moonlight, the fire, the electricity. Without that, the world will not function. It will stop. Nothing will happen. But he says the spiritual world, his home, is not like that. It's different. It doesn't depend on these things for existence, which means it is self revealing or self dependent. What about then return from there? It's like you go there, it's a holiday spot. You go there for some time, then come back. No, never. Once you go there, you don't come back. So before, of course, Gita talks very less about that eternal place, but we can understand a little bit here more about the material world where we are living in. Where we are living in is called the universe. Universe means it's not just one planet, it means the entire cosmos. So universe is in Sanskrit known as anda, and it's like a coconut covered by its hard shell. What is the shape of the universe? I already said. Now, if you understand uh, Hindi or Sanskrit, you know. But exactly as you can see in the diagram here, what is the shape of a universe? How does the universe look like? It looks like an egg. Yes, that's why it's called anda. Which anda? Brahmanda. the egg-like structure in which first who was born? Brahma was born. So it's known as Brahmanda. So this universe is like also a coconut, sorry, covered by its hard shell. And half of it, as you can see in this illustration, half of it is filled up with water. And it's covered by very thick material, elements, layers. It's like an airtight covering. No air can come out of it. Nothing can go inside. Half filled with water, and the upper half of this universe is completely dark, dense darkness. In order to remove that dense darkness, God has put two shining luminaries or planets known as the sun and the moon for illuminating the whole universe. And then Lord Krishna here talks about going from this material universe, which is a dark place, to spiritual world, which is a place full of light. He's doing an advertisement. Just like if you go to you know a famous city, famous for tourism in any country, and or that's the exit city from the country, let's say, or that's the entry city. So you'll find boards, hoardings, advertising, visit this place, visit this city, 2 days, 3 nights, or 2 nights, 3 days. This is the package. All that information is given. Basically, why that kind of advertisement? Just to attract people's attention and inspire them to take on that journey, right? From, let's say if you're in Mumbai, there you'll find a board, fly to Mauritius. And you're in Mauritius, you get down from the airport, and there you find a board, fly to Mumbai. So that's how the tourism industry works. It kind of, you know, attracts people's attention and tries to entice them for this kind of journey so that they can enjoy their holidays and be happy. And then in all those informations given, like what all details are given in such holiday packages? You are given the number of days you can stay, the places you'll visit, the price, the terms. And then finally what is given is conditions apply. These conditions apply, then you can go for this particular tour. Similarly, in spiritual world also, Lord Krishna says that you can come if you like, and anyone can come and like, anyone who wants to come. But the price is nirmana moha jita sangha dosha. Apart from that, no other conditions apply. That's the only condition that applies. So then Arjuna's question arises. He says, I understand this all, this is interesting, but why the jiva come here then in this material world, which is not a very nice place? Why jiva took that decision? Jiva means living entity. So Lord Krishna mentions, because Mamaivamsho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. The living entity is my ansha, my part and parcel. Eternal, fragmental part. Living entity is Krishna's ansha, part. Very tiny part, a small part. Why did the Lord mention something like this? Because he wants to teach us. Krishna, being the complete source, has all the qualities. And one of the qualities that he has is he is Swarat, or fully independent. We being parts of him, we borrow all the qualities from him. And but because we are tiny, we also borrow the qualities in a very tiny amount, in a very minute amount, very, very insignificant amount. So because God is supremely independent and we are his part, we also have some independence. And independence means you have choice between the right and wrong, right and left, this or that. So because the jiva has this choice, the jiva sometimes misuses this choice, makes the wrong choice. And when the jiva makes the wrong choice, the journey of material life begins for that jiva. Just like, look at this rose flower. So if that rose flower has a good fragrance, if you remove the petals of that rose flower, will the petal also have that same fragrance or no? It's a very simple question. I'm just asking you so that you are active and listening attentively. If the rose flower has a fragrance, if you take one leaf or rose petal of that rose flower, will it also have that fragrance of the flower? Yes. Yes. Why? Because that petal is a part of the flower. It will carry its qualities. Next example. There is a soup in a bowl, and you have put all the ingredients in the soup, the black pepper, the salt, and you have mixed it properly. Now you take one spoon out of that soup bowl and taste that soup in the spoon, whatever has come. Will it also have similar taste to what is there in the bowl? Yes, has to be, isn't it? Because it's taken from the bowl. So it will have the qualities of the soup in the bowl. Similarly, the point we are making is because we are parts of Krishna, we have qualities that are in Krishna. And therefore, there is a freedom that we have that we can misuse. And when you misuse that freedom, it leads to bondage. When we correctly use that freedom, it leads to liberation. Bondage by whom? And liberation from whom? Or from what? So, bondage by the three modes and liberation from the three modes. So then Krishna says to Arjuna, due to this conditional life means life of bondage, the living entities are struggling very hard, day and night, with the six senses, including the mind. Because of the misuse of freedom, the living entity has to actually suffer a lot. That suffering means struggle. Struggle with the world, yes, but struggle so much with oneself, with one's own crazy mind, and with one's wild senses. Life is a struggle. People may accept it or not, but life is definitely a struggle. For many people, for some people, it may not be so bad, but still, no one can say I had no struggles. There are struggles at different levels, and everyone goes through. So, life is a struggle, a hard struggle, and that struggle is there because of the living entities' misused independence. The struggle makes the living entity take birth again and again. Shariram yatavapnoti, you know, born, then grows, then starts dwindling, and then dies. And this doesn't just happen once, it happens again and again, again and again, again and again. And this is a big struggle, isn't it? Because as long as we are born again and again, that means we have to suffer again and again, go through all the problems that are there again and again. So it's a struggle, it's a big struggle. And then Arjuna says, but what is the cure of this ignorance because of which people are struggling so bad? And Lord Krishna says, the cure is they have to learn to see life, they have to learn to see everything and everyone through the knowledge given in the scriptures, through the eyes of the scriptures. They must see everything. Shariram yat avapnoti. The struggle makes the jiva go through the cycle of birth and death. Why are we not able to see that struggle? Because Lord Krishna says we don't yet see the difference between body and soul. As long as one thinks I am this material body, one will not see that I am struggling in material life because we identify with the struggle. But when we understand I am not this body, I am something beyond this body, then for us, the material life starts appearing to be a struggle. And I'm just struggling here, doing nothing. Then Arjuna further questions how to cure this ignorance, and Krishna says through knowledge. You have to develop the eyes of knowledge, and that's what this whole section is about, developing knowledge. Listen, everyone is struggling, but most people don't know why. We all have the option to either keep struggling, be in the rat race, or get rid of that struggle once and forever. Don't you help them in this struggle? The soft nature of Arjuna has come out now. So he's saying, my dear Lord, they are all your children, isn't it? And they're struggling so badly. So are you not helping them? Lord Krishna says, of course, of course, of course. I do help them in all ways. I do help them, and I maintain them in different levels. And then Lord Krishna explains how he maintains all the living entities at all different levels. First, cosmic level means collectively what it does for everyone. And then individual level, just for you, for me, for everyone, tailor-made help. So at the cosmic level, the first thing that Lord Krishna does is he gives us the light for the sun, for the moon, for the fire. He's the source of everything. So sunlight is also coming from Krishna. Moonlight is also coming from Krishna. The fire, its energy is also coming from Krishna. He provides that. Now that's a big, big help for all of us because we cannot survive without sun. We cannot survive without moon. We cannot survive without fire. And without his mercy, Krishna's mercy, there cannot be all these three things. Second, at the cosmic level, how does he help? He supports the planets. It's not that the planets are just freely flying around as we study in modern cosmology. Actually, the planets are held actually at their places, at their respective places, through the gravitational attraction. And this gravitational attraction is a force which is controlled by an entity, Sankarshana. So that's how the planets are. Otherwise, planets would just um, break apart into dust particles and be scattered here and there. Then finally, in the cosmic level, Lord Krishna helps by supplying the juice of life to the different food, vegetables, fruits that we eat or consume. And at individual level, how does he help? Once you have cooked the food, eaten the food, then the food goes into the stomach, and the stomach has to do its job, a difficult job of digesting all that food. So the stomach digestive fire has to be quite strong. And that fire which helps in digestion is called Vaishvanara. And Lord Krishna says, I am that fire. It's me who helps in digesting every single thing that a person eats. And finally, okay, before you go there, a small piece of interesting information. When you study Ayurveda, we come to know that there is not just one type of fire, there are 13 types of Agni. And these different types of Agnis have different purposes. So one of that Agni is the Jathar Agni, or the, the fire which helps in digestion. But there are many other Agnis also. One is Jathar Agni, as I said, 5 are Bhuta Agni, and 7 are Dhatva Agni. And they have different roles to play. So Lord says, I am that Jathar Agni, the fire of digestion. And finally, Arjuna then says, my dear Lord, you help them to remain stuck in this material world. Don't you help them to come out of this world? Then Lord Krishna says, of course, I do that also. Situated in everyone's heart as the super soul, I help them come out of their problems, of their difficulties, and actually march back home, back to God, to the spiritual world. I do help them, personally help them, guide them individually. That verse you all might be knowing, or some of you would definitely know. Sarvasya chaham hridhi sannivishto matah smritir jnanam apohanam cha vedaischa sarver ahameva vedyo vedanta krit vedvid eva chaham. Lord Krishna is saying, Sarvasya chahamriti sannivishta. Mattah smriti jnanam pohanam cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance. We remember anything. We cannot remember it without the help of Paramatma or Super Soul. Like we go to sleep at night, and in that state, we are almost dead. We don't know who we are. We don't know where we are sleeping, the address of that place. But when we are again awake in the morning, immediately all that memory comes back. Who you are, what you do, who are your families, relatives, what is that place. So that remembrance, that memory comes from Paramatma, the Super Soul. Similarly, any kind of knowledge also is given by the Super Soul from the heart. And if we have to forget something which is not good for us, or we should not be remembering it, then the Lord also helps us to forget. And then he says, by all the Vedas, I am to be known. I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. Lord Krishna is personally telling that what is the relationship between him and the Vedas? He is the compiler of Vedanta, he is the knower of the Vedas, and through the Vedas, he is to be known. Like, you go to a library, and there's so many books there. So if you want to know about uh, a particular book, some information like who is the author of that book, when was this book first published, how many copies of it were published, who has written the acknowledgement to that book, how many pages it has. From where do you get all that information about a book? Everything that you want to know about that book, useful information. Right. No, so from where do you get all that information? You get all that information from the book itself, correct? The book gives you all that information. Similarly, then these days people have so many confusions about the Vedas. Who wrote the Vedas? When were they written? Are they just mythological stories, or they're historical facts? How old is that history? What is the benefit of that? It's an outdated knowledge, isn't it? Like that people think. But basically, the Vedas are the most ancient books of knowledge, and all that is written there is all correct at all times. It's like, there's this person known as Philip Goldberg. He has written a book called American Veda. This book talks about how Indian spirituality has changed the West. So many billions of people, around 25 to 30 million Americans, taking to spiritual practices like yoga, meditation, chanting. So this book talks about all of that. And where is that knowledge coming from? The Vedas. Everything. So the Vedas are very, very relevant, has been relevant and will be relevant, and we'll know about the Vedas a bit more in this table. So what is the subject of the Vedas? What does the Veda talk about the most? What is the Veda trying to teach? Okay, so a lot of time is going on. In your answering the questions, you're taking too much time. So the subject of the Vedas is complete knowledge. That's what the Veda gives. The meaning of the word Veda is that Veda, complete knowledge. Who is the writer or author of the Vedas? Has someone written them now? Someone authored them? Someone manufactured them? No. So Vedas say they are apaurushaya. Apaurushaya means they have not been given by an ordinary human. Apaurushaya. What is the source of the Vedas? Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu was first breathing, and from that divine breath came out the sound called the Vedas. Available since when? The Vedas, do they have a date? Everything else can have a date, but not the Vedas. Since the beginning of creation, the Vedas exist. And who is the first student of the Vedas? So Lord Krishna mentions Lord Brahma is the first student of the Vedas. how the Vedas came to human society. So Parashar Muni, whose name we have heard before, was a great sage, a very learned scholar, and he he actually impregnated Satyavati, and from them were born a person whose name later on became Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa. Krishna, because this boy was dark in complexion, just like Lord Krishna, as you can see in the painting on the left side of Vyasadev. Dvaipayana, because this boy was born in an island. And Vyasa is not actually a name, Vyasa means compiler, one who has compiled. So Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, son of Parashar and Satyavati, he compiled the Vedas. Next lesson. A true friend is one who never leaves us alone, be it good times or bad times. So this lesson is in relationship to Lord Krishna acting as the super soul. He never leaves us. We might be in any kind of abominable body, doing any kind of abominable action, but the Lord still continues to remain seated in the heart. He doesn't leave. That's the sign of a true friend. So now, when Krishna mentioned to Arjuna, I know the Vedas, I have compiled the Vedas. Arjuna says, what if people ask you for a proof that you know the Vedas? What will you tell them? Of course, Bhagavad Gita will not allow Lord Krishna to explain all that information. So, but still Arjuna had this curiosity that if you know the Vedas, what's the proof? And then Lord Krishna mentions, okay, because I know the Vedas, I can tell you Vedanta Sar, the essence of the Vedas, the summary, in just 3 to 4 verses, which is such a humongous task, so difficult to do. Summarize all the teachings of the Vedas in just 3 to 4 verses. So then Lord Krishna started speaking the Vedanta Sar. That's the last section of this chapter. He says, Da imo purusho loke ksharashchakshara. So he said, first of all, there are 2 kinds of living beings, as mentioned here. Those who are fallible, they are put in the first category. Second, those who are infallible, Akshara Jeev. And then we have the super soul, and then we have the supreme person, Krishna. So that's the order. That's the order to be accepted. And these 3 verses is called Vedanta Sar. They give the essential knowledge of all the Vedas. That in the material creation, there are 2 kinds of created beings. Beyond them is the super soul, and beyond them is the supreme personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Yasmasharam atitoham aksharaadapi chottamaha atosmi loke vedecha parathitah purushottamaha. Because I am transcendental, beyond both the fallible and the infallible, and because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as that supreme person. So what we learn from here is Lord Krishna is superior to everyone. He is superior to all the jivas. He is superior to Brahman, also known as Brahmajyoti. He is superior to Super Soul. He is superior to other forms of God. He is beyond everything. That's why it's called the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he's celebrated in the Vedas as Purushottama. So therefore this chapter got the name Purushottama Yoga. Then the Lord says, he who knows this, what Lord explained about the Vedanta Sar, the 3 verses, he knows everything. This knowledge is the most secret part of the Vedic scriptures, indirectly encouraging that you become wise and perfect in everything. So this chapter ends here. You can start sending your questions now. It's a very short chapter, so we try to do justice to it. It's called Purushottam Yoga. Yoga through the help of the Supreme Person, and 5 quick lessons to take home. First, perverted reflection. Perverted reflection lesson is for what? It's for this that, since we don't understand there is a real reality and this is a false reality. So we cannot expect some of the very good qualities from people in this world, because that is only possible in that other world. So it helps us to always keep our feet on the ground, have reasonable expectations, and not imagine something which is not possible. This world is a perverted reflection of the spiritual reality. It's not complete reflection, it's changed, transformed. Just like you can see in the picture here. Material world is a place full of lust. So spiritual world is a place full of love. That's called perverted reflection. Material world is a place full of anger. Spiritual world is a place full of compassion. Material world there is greed. In spiritual world there is satisfaction. In material world there is pride. In spiritual world there is humility. Ignorance here, knowledge there. Like that. Envy here, appreciation there. Next lesson. We all have to learn this very seriously, that whatever we have in our possession, we should always think that we are the caretakers of that, not the owners of that. It has been given in our care, and we should just use it for that purpose and not become an owner. Attach to detach. Yes, that's the key. Like people sometimes get scared. How to get detached? We are so attached. So the way to get detached is, of course, you want to get detached from something which is not healthy for your spiritual life. So the way to get detached is you get attached to those who are very strong, very powerful. So here it's explained like with the example, you have two plugs and there are two power sockets, power points. So then you put this plug in one, there's no electricity supply. What you'll do, you'll plug it out and put it in the other plug, because there's a chance of electricity being there. And yes, it is there, so your work gets done. So being detached means what? When the proper time has come to leave something or leave someone, you can easily let it go. Next, God helps at every step. That's so true. And finally, knowledge is revealed. Knowledge is revealed within the heart. By good practices in spiritual life, knowledge is revealed. Chapter at a glance, we started with Lord Krishna explaining from material world to spiritual world how to go. Then he talks about the struggle in the cycle of birth and death. Further, he says God helps at every step, and essence of Vedanta was explained. Know God, know everything. That is also explained in this chapter. So let's start taking your questions now, please. Okay, first question. Chandra Sharma ji. Hare Krishna. Everything is okay, but please tell, has the God created human being for suffering only by giving so many wishes and dreams? The God has not created human being for that. The living entity is not just a human being. The living entity is Atma, having a covering, a body. So the living entities or Atmas originally exist for what reason? To give pleasure to Paramatma, to give happiness to Paramatma. So that science has to be learned. That's all. Nothing else will work or will help. Next question. In the Vedanta Sar, what is the difference between Super Soul and Supreme Person Krishna? Super Soul is that form of God who is within the heart of every living entity, who is within every single atom, and takes care of the material affairs in the universe, the material creation. Whereas Krishna, Lord Krishna, is someone who is the source of all the avatars, who visits the material world or material universe once in a while. And uh, for this, the super soul, he controls only within the material universe or creation. But the Supreme Lord, he is the controller of the place here and the beyond the spiritual world. So he's the source even of the super soul. That's the difference. Next question. Let's see if we have some more questions coming today. No more questions. When was the universe created? Thank you. The universe, when was it created? You want a date to that? Well, difficult to calculate because it's been a long time the universe has been created. We can do that calculation also by finding out the age of Brahma and dividing it by 2. So that's the age somewhat of the universe, which means millions and billions of years ago. Any other question? How to attain God realization? Okay, thank you. God realization happens by following the instructions given by God. Different instructions are given in Bhagavad Gita. When we start applying them, so slowly we begin to realize God. So it's a step-by-step process. You have to follow the Gita, the teachings of the Gita, engage in spiritual practices, and that's how the God realization unfolds in our consciousness. Next question. Rohit Khandelwalji. Confidential path of Gita also instructed in Bhakti Yoga. And now here also, what is the difference? Actually, everything in Bhagavad Gita is related to bhakti. When we say the first 6 chapters talk about karma yoga, the middle 6 bhakti, the last 6 jnana, you should know that it's not that these subjects exist only within these units. There is bhakti in chapter 1 to 6 also. There is jnana in chapter 1 to 6 also. It says that karma is most prominent in chapter 1 to 6. That's why it's called karma yoga. Similarly, in chapter 7 to 12, bhakti is most important. Or in chapter 13 to 14, jnana is most prominent. But you'll find that knowledge divided and shared in all the different parts of the Bhagavad Gita. Next question. From where did desires arise if we are complete being Krishna sense? You have to start from the quality of freedom. The quality of freedom is there. Freedom means ability to choose. So I say, where did the desire come from? It came from the ability to choose. That's called freedom. It's not something like, you wanted to eat an ice cream and that's why you came to material world. It's not gross like that. It's a very subtle desire, the subtle desire to be independent. So we will understand that after some serious study and serious spiritual practices, that this desire, though very subtle, is the root desire. And this may happen with anyone because of that freedom factor. Next question, Akshay Sahu. As we are permanent servant of Krishna, but how we forgot Lord Krishna? You can forget anytime, anyone. Permanent means that's in your nature, but it doesn't mean that that's forced upon you. So if you will to, you can. Just like now, for example. Now also, today we are studying Bhagavad Gita. Tomorrow, people may have no interest in Bhagavad Gita at all. The same person is studying it today. So how that person has forgotten the Gita or has lost its sense, the sense of its importance. So that's the nature of the living entity, marginal. That's the nature of the living entity. Next question. No, Nidhi Khatrich. Who is responsible for attachment with the world? Only the soul, or Krishna also plays? Only the soul. Krishna doesn't play any role for the living entity to get attached to this world. It's we alone who play that role. Next question. Are we the souls who forgot God? Yes, we are the ones who forgot God. That's why we are here in the material world. And do we need a proof for that? We don't need a proof for that. We very well know in 24 hours a day, which means 24 by 60 minutes, which means 24 by 60 by 60 seconds. How many seconds do we actually remember God? Hardly few. Rest of the time, we are so absorbed in the self, that's the body, in the mind, in people around us, the world around us. So definitely we have forgotten God. How many times ideally you should read Bhagavad Gita, Sahanaji? There's nothing like that. You can continue reading again and again. For me, I have read Gita 14 times, cover to cover, from beginning to end. And it doesn't mean that now it's full stop for me. No more I want to read it again. No. If I get chance, if I get time, I would also want to read it again. So you can read it as many times as possible. Next. How we control our mind during japa and how control anger. You control the mind by many ways. First of all, you try to bring the mind back to your chanting. So we have to control our mind in that way. And also, the kind of quality of chanting you'll do depends on the way you have spent your day. How did you spend your day? If you spend your day totally disconnected from Lord and His teachings, then the japa or the chanting in the next day morning will be not so nice. So we have to stay connected throughout. And then the next day is also very nice, the morning chanting, right? And chanting is a big subject. I'm sorry, I'm not able to do justice to it because there are many ways we can be doing wrong chanting or inattentive chanting. And there are multiple solutions to that. But we try our best to be attentive, fresh, and we live our day in a way that it doesn't affect badly our chanting the next day. Next question. Is understanding attachment essential before realizing detachment? Not always. Not always. You don't have to experience every single thing to give it up. Certain things you have experienced and you have given up, but other things you can just see others experiencing it and you learn from their experience. So, not that every single thing we need to do, burn our fingers, and then get detached. Name, the mantra, the sound, not nirakar. We focus on the sound. Like if you're chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, so that mantra is a sound, a transcendental sound, a divine sound. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So you focus on this sound. That's the meditation. That's the meditation. All right, so we'll stop here. Thank you all very much. See you again tomorrow for the next chapter. Very, very interesting chapter. The next chapter we are going to discuss is like a mirror, which will help us see who we are ourselves personally, right? And we'll learn a lot in that. So we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you so very much for joining in this session. Hare Krishna.